So,
All right. You want to give your update and then launch into the questions? Because I got a bunch of them this week.
okay, good. All right. I don't even know where to begin. Well, I guess the good news is that Hunter survived his surgery and is now a solid week into his recovery, and he's doing great. He is at home. He's out of the hospital, and he's receiving care at home care. But he's essentially doing really great, and we hope that he will be back to full steam within the month. Okay, so it was a pretty serious operation and will take a while, but our banker extraordinaire came through it. So, oh, wait, he's a prosperator. Okay, he's not a banker, he's a prosperator. We're making the effort to switch over to better verbiage and to concentrate on the positive aspects of things. We'll be investing in healing centers, right? We're not even sure where the big push to reestablish the name medical ever came from. What we're interested in is health and healing. We're not interested in docking doctors and word games that are designed to excuse actions that are inexcusable and legal presumptions that are also inexcusable. So anyway, that's very good news for all of us. The timeline and everything that is developing for the use of services for the vendors and for retail clients is excellent at this point. There were a couple of regulatory hassles that, let's put it this way, were put in front of us about 2 months ago that have finally been resolved. Similar to the problems that we had having our state credential cards recognized as valid ID and as real ID, or our equivalent of a real ID, so that we didn't have to worry about that anymore. But anyway, the good news is we hopped through all of the flaming hoops of fire. We climbed over the walls. We burrowed under them. We did whatever we had to do to finally get to this moment where we're looking at imminent deployment of the entire system, which includes, remember, everybody here is so, blinded by their own needs that they don't think about this, but your needs really include both public and private property aspects. Every single one of you has both a private estate, right? Your house, your car, your body, your name, everything, right? But you also have a public estate interest in all of the infrastructure, in the public lands, in the public utility plants, the electrical generation grid, the gas lines, all this stuff that are public utilities, all these things like national and state parks, that you have a private and a public asset component that goes with your estate, and they all have to be maintained and they all have to be cared for. I understand that there was a meltdown in the California Assembly with people screaming about transparency. Oh, there's no transparency. We can't stare up Hunter's butt and we can't see down Anna's skirt and we can't figure out what's going on all the time. And we're so frustrated and we want our money. Well, that is just totally the wrong attitude to take. Number one, because you are the government, okay? So if things aren't moving along as fast as you want, maybe you should be putting in more time doing your job, which is not my job, right? If I ever saw an assembly that has had trouble from the moment it was conceived, it's California. And it's been the same consistent problem all the way through. Either thinking that they're the princes and gods of the entire world and planet and can do everything without anybody's say so, and not wanting to listen to any kind of direction from the Federation, or realize that they're part of something larger than just California on one end of the spectrum, or to go completely the other way and be sitting there wanting to be served and expecting someone else to do the work, and wanting to then, act as oversight over anybody who's doing any work. Well, I've got news for you. I've been doing my job, plus putting up with the extra added job of trying to organize all of these assemblies. And it hasn't been easy. Let me suggest to you that if you're a member of an assembly anywhere in this country, you should be worried about getting your own treasurer elected, your own banking committee set up, your own accounting people identified, and you should be thinking about the future in terms of how are you going to provide a state level banking service, and when are you going to take over responsibility for retail banking services. There are about 150 questions I could sit down right now and hand to you all that need to be answered by the state assembly so far as banking goes, and so far as prosperity centers, which are the prepaid credit facilities, go. So instead of wanting to look down my neck, look down your own. Take care of the job that you have set in front of you, because I am almost done with my part. And as far as transparency goes, you will never get transparency about any of this except through the members of your Congress. Your congressional delegation will get transparency from the Department of Treasury. But you individually will not. And that's just the way that game goes, because other countries look at your assets and they make plans about how they're going to undermine you. So that's just going to be the way it is. And it's not something that I dictated or that Hunter dictated. It's the way the game is played at this point in our human history. So you'll get your transparency secondhand through the members of your Congress that you elect to be delegates. And they will get their information direct from the U.S. Treasury. And I will be the one standing there opening the door so that you can have a treasury. Do you even realize that you have not had a treasury in this country for the people of this country or the states since 1924? Do you realize that we're bringing that back so that there is a treasury? That we're making it possible for you to have a Congress that represents you instead of representing franchises of foreign corporations? Do you have any grasp at all of your part in all of this? And that you have responsibilities that you need to be attending to at the state level to answer state level questions? Like, how many banks do you need? Should the banks and the prosperity centers be combined or under the same roof? Where are these facilities supposed to be located? How are you going to provide service to both rural and very urban communities? What kind of accounting system are your state banks going to use? Are you going to just take what you inherit from us? Or are you going to have your own system? And how are you going to facilitate communication with all the other banks How are you going to educate all your people about banking and credit services? This is your responsibility. Everybody's still sitting around waiting for the government to deliver. You are the government. And you all have a part to play. You all have decisions to make. You all need to get organized and get ready. Now, there's no more time to wait and futz around. And we certainly don't need an oversight committee for the Federation, because guess what? The Federation has been trying to provide some oversight for you so that you get it straight at the state level. The Federation has been carrying 90% of the weight for 90% of the time for far too long already. Most of you assemblies out there don't even send us $20 a month to help us. And you think you're going to sit around and complain about the service? It's not fast enough. It's not fast enough. It's not transparent enough. We don't get to look down the little microscope at what people are doing. Look at it this way. You wouldn't have a pot. You wouldn't have a claim. You wouldn't be anywhere at all if not for the Federation and the people who have loyally stuck through and brought back your identity and your power and your ability to govern yourselves. Now it's up to you to do the governing of yourselves, including your tongues and your thoughts. You need to sit down and give yourselves all a good little talking to this evening and realize that you are the government. You have to make government decisions. You have to make decisions about your state. You're going to have to elect a congressional delegation, and you're going to have to hope and pray to God that you can get at least 3 or 4 or 5 members of your assembly educated enough to fill that role. Now, I'm just giving it to you straight, folks. I see a lot of people who stand around and they think, oh, isn't this great? We're free. And you think that that's just all there is to it. Oh, we're getting money. Oh, isn't that wonderful? We're going to get money and prepaid credit that's owed to us. Well, that is wonderful. However, that's an inheritance from a lot of other people that got rooked and who suffered and went without and lost homes and lost farms and put up with a whole bunch of political bullshit that they should never have had to put up with. So now it's up to you. I'm doing my job. I'm here and Hunter's here, and we are poised and ready to deliver. We're here for when the lights go out. And you're going to be sitting there still going fumble, fumble, fiddle, fiddle, worrying about who likes who and who does what, and, not paying any attention to the real opportunity and the real responsibility that gives you your rights. So, someone else went out and fought the hard battles. Someone else took on the Pope. Someone else took on the Queen. Someone else built an entire new, fresh, clean, honest banking system with carriage accounting. Someone else opened up all of this so that you could have banks of your own under your own oversight, taking care of your own assets. Someone else put themselves and their fortunes on the line to do all this for you. And yet, guess what? There's still more to do. There's a lot more to do. There's more to do at the state level. There's more to do at the quote unquote federal level. Because at some point here, you're going to have to elect a Congress, a Continental Congress, not a U.S. Congress, not an assembly of the states in the form of a municipal state or a territorial state, or even a quote unquote federal state, a Continental Congress. You are going to have the responsibility for that. And you're all sitting there acting like little kids, trying to come back in at the fifth act of the play and exercise oversight on the people who've done everything to make this possible. If you sat down for 5 seconds and used your heads, if you had any common sense at all, it should occur to you at some point that, oh, I didn't know I had an inheritance. Oh, I didn't know I was being counted as a British subject. Oh, I didn't know that I had lost all of my constitutional rights. Oh, I didn't know I was being harassed by foreign courts that really have no authority to operate in this country. Oh, I didn't. You know, if I just wanted to sit here and let everything go to hell in a handbasket and betray all of the work and the dreams and the idealism of the founding fathers who gave up everything to give you the chance, then I wouldn't have given up all that I've given up, and Jim wouldn't have given up all that he's given up to give you back your inheritance. Why in the hell would I steal an inheritance that I told you about and that I've spent 30 years trying to get back to you? If I wanted to steal your inheritance, Lala, I would have just done what everybody else has done. I would have kept my mouth shut and not gone through all this irritation. Right? I could have saved myself. I could have saved my inheritance. I could have said goodbye to all of you. I didn't have to take up the job. Get real. Use your heads. Use your eyes, your ears. Tune in to what is going on around you and the part that you are being asked to play in your own life. And pay attention to the work that you have to do. I'm doing mine. Hunter's doing his. Everybody else I know that's part of the Federation is working their rump off and has been for a long, long time to get their job done on time. Well, where are you going to be when the clock strikes midnight and it's time for you to stand up as an assembly and conduct the business for your state? How's your education going to stand when it's time to send congressional delegates? Where are those people being groomed right now? Where's your banking committees? Where are your trustees? Where are your people? What are your issues? What infrastructure do you need to rebuild? What infrastructure don't you have that you need? How are you going to deliver bank services to all the people in your state? How are you going to make sure that the law is obeyed? You know, there's so damn much for you to do at the state level that I can hardly even comprehend all of the different questions that each one of these assemblies needs to answer and all the work that needs to be going on right now. And instead, what I get from you folks out there in the audience is, oh, well, Jimmy doesn't like Kathy and Kathy doesn't like Ruth. Do you know how completely irritating it is for me to stand here and listen to this as if I were a kindergarten teacher, having to teach you all how to behave in a public meeting, or how to treat other people to gain a community response, a cooperative response. I just don't know. You know, sitting here this afternoon, I don't know if this entire American experience is going to work or not. After giving 40 years of my life to pursuing justice for the American people, not anything above and beyond, just the plain old substance of justice that people should have the enjoyment and use of what's theirs, and they should have the rights that they fought for and the freedom that they fought for. Just the plain old decency of people should have what is theirs. Okay? I'm not sure that the American people are ready to take the responsibility of managing what's theirs. I think that they're so used to the nanny state that they just want to lay on their backs in their cribs and suck their baba. Maybe that's true. Maybe I've been on a fool's errand all these years, thinking that there were other Americans like me that wanted control of their lives and didn't want to be herded around by their employees and robbed by their employees at will. Maybe I just wasn't getting it. Maybe you're all just content to let Uncle Donnie and Uncle Scotty and all the other characters in Washington, D.C. make decisions about how you receive your money or don't. I'm sure they can find all sorts of things to spend it on if you can't. And as for me, I am fed up. Okay? I'm just absolutely fed up with people shuffling off their responsibilities and trying to horn in and act in judgment against what I've done when they've done nothing. Okay, you see that? Comparatively, they've done less than zero. Maybe they sort of kind of woke up for 5 minutes. I'm telling you, you got to get ready. You got to stand up. You got to get fierce about being an American. You got to take hold of the work that's in front of you and do it. And I don't mean maybe. I don't mean sitting around for next year. I mean right now. You know, all this idea that, oh, well, we're going to wait until the money comes in. No, don't wait anymore. Get moving, because the money's going to hit and you won't be ready for it. You're going to be standing there like so many clay pigeons going, what do we do? What do we do? What do we spend it on? What are our needs? How do we organize it? And you've had all this time to think about it, and instead, what you've been worrying about is me and what I was doing or not doing, complaining because I wasn't doing it fast enough. Well, guess what? You're the ones that are supposed to be doing your share and at your level, taking care of your state. And so far, all I'm seeing from most of the assemblies is a bunch of petty politicking, a bunch of ignorance, a lot of people who won't read, won't ask questions, sit around and fester, and then come out and open their mouths, and all that comes out is more stupidity. If you don't want to be treated like little babies in a cradle, if you want to have the rights that go, then you have to take the responsibilities that go with being an adult. Anyway, My patience with the assemblies is worn thin. It's not my job to organize you. As the summoning authority, the Federation has the responsibility to see to it that you promptly and properly organize yourselves, to answer your questions, to provide you with legal opinions, lawful opinions, to provide you with protection from those who would like to destroy your assemblies and accuse you of being insurrectionists. All of that we have on our shoulders. But the actual work, the responsibility for organizing and answering your own questions and, finding your way forward as an assembly structure is 100% yours. Each and every state. So if you care about your community and you care about your lives and you care about your state and you care about your money and you care about your security, then let me suggest to you that the proper, lawful, peaceful means to achieve everything that you need has been landed in your lap through the work of a whole bunch of people that you don't even know. Other Americans who have given of their time and of their money for decades to make this possible. And if you blow this chance through your own laziness or your own lack of ability to think or whatever else it is, because you don't like Jimmy or because Susan is being a gossip or whatever, if you let anything stand in your way between doing what you need to do to get your part of the puzzle sorted out, then it's on you. It's not on me. It's not on anybody at the Federation level. It's your own responsibility to get past, over, under, or through whatever obstacles seem to be standing in the way of your state assembly doing its job and gaining new members and educating those new members and bringing more and more people together to get the job done. That's up to you. And if you don't do it, well, guess what? We'll have that situation where Missouri becomes part of Kansas, where Florida gets joined to Georgia. We'll do whatever has to be done, whatever it sorts out. If people don't want to take any hand in and take responsibility for their state government in Vermont, we'll be happy to make it part of New Hampshire. Won't bother us. Doesn't really make a difference to us. But I'll guarantee you that all those Vermonters that are sitting there, going, they'll be upset when the time comes. You bet they'll be upset. And it won't be because we haven't been standing here telling them. The same goes for every other assembly all around this country. We've been sounding the alarm from the watchtowers for what, 5 years? It's on you, baby. If you don't step up, if you don't grab your brother and your sister and your odd aunt and your co-workers from the job and the fellows that are members of your club, and if you don't bring all those people in and start working together to accomplish the work at the state level, well, then guess what? I guess there just won't be a state. Or at least not the state that you're thinking of, the state that you assume exists without you, without your work, without your self-governance. Just saying, folks. I spent 14 hours this week talking to people from different assemblies around the country. And most of them were just had their heads up their butts so far they'll never see daylight. And I was just as honest with them as I am with you. This whole idea that it's somebody else's job and that you're not happy with the service you're getting, think twice. You are the government. From here on, it's up to you. You have to get your ducks in order. You have to think about public assets in your state. You have to think about natural resource issues. You have to think about everything, all of it. You know, the courts, the prison system, CPS, all these things that bother so many people. You've got to think about them. You've got to organize. You have to replace them. You have to change them. You have to do the work. And there's nobody to do it but you. Okay, is that clear? Okay, so having spent so much of my time this past week, or shall I say wasted it, trying to get people to really come forward and deal with their issues and ask their questions and get with the program, I have nonetheless carried on all the diplomatic correspondences and duties. I have been working with all the other parties and all the other institutions and organizations to bring forward the American claims, to make the issues clear to the military, and to make sense of all the chaos out there. And I know that it's easy for people to get distracted when things are chaotic. I know it's easy for people to get panicked when things are like this, and they are. We've just had a major meltdown in the physical silver market. That has resulted in a complete meltdown in the so-called paper silver trading market. We have discovered that silver was leveraged 32 to 1. That is, 32 ounces of paper silver were leveraged on 1 ounce of actual silver, which is outrageous, and which they will try to sweep under the rug, but which we cannot let that continue on, folks. Okay, so there has to be a change in the law and in the way these things are being administered. Okay, we have to make changes. It's not just enough to have this blow up in our face. We have to then take action to change things so that this sort of thing does not happen again with other commodities. And they are trying to make some adjustments. Not what's totally needed, but they have taken a stab at making some adjustments. Now, you've heard about the Federal Reserve. It's been absorbed into the U.S. Treasury. The next step will be the IRS going bye-bye because the IRS is no longer needed. Okay? The IRS was not doing what you thought it was doing. You thought it was collecting your money, okay, the debt notes. You thought they were collecting that and then using that to pay for things like roads and bridges and schools and extensions of the electrical grid and things of that nature. And no, instead, They were just taking that money out of circulation and using it to control the inflation that was caused by their spending, by their printing press mill, okay? Taking that money out of the economy every year is how they controlled the inflation caused by all of the printing of quote unquote money, printing of debt, okay? That's how they managed that. And now that the Federal Reserve is absorbed into the US Treasury, there's no longer any need for that kind of a pressure valve on inflation to take place every year, because once you stop the printing presses and you stop the taxation, the whole thing starts to settle out naturally. So a lot of this has not been what you thought, was not what you assumed about it. And now that the Federal Reserve is being absorbed and all of the offshore money printing is being shut down, you can expect that there are going to be more institutional changes that follow in a domino-like effect. Now, we've discussed Mr. Trump's tariffs. The tariffs are really not producing this huge amount of money from nowhere that everybody seems to think, you know. What's happening is it's a consumer tax. It gets passed on to whoever the consumer of that product is, wherever they are in the world. It does not matter. A tariff is by definition a consumer tax. So if you drink French wine, it's going to cost you probably $10 a bottle more simply in paying the tariff on it. If you need a supply from other parts of the world in order to make your product, then you're going to pay more, right, as a manufacturer. And then guess what? You're going to pass that extra cost on to your customers. And the prices of everything will rise, and you will be spending more to get the same product because of the tariff that's been placed on either the product itself or the materials going into that product. So it's a consumer tax. It's a consumer tax for the manufacturers who are consuming raw materials and parts and things that they're ordering in. And it's a consumer tax at the level of the retail consumer who is buying whatever it is that's subject to tariff. So what tariffs are really used for is a short-term burst of increased money for the government. And they're actually taxing you, the consumer, and the manufacturer, the American manufacturer, to generate all of that extra money. Because believe me, the French farmer or the French vintner over in France making that bottle of wine is just going to go, well, I'm going to add $10 to the cost of my wine. And then the importer is going to add on a few shekels for his extra paperwork and whatnot. And you're going to pay more money for that same bottle of wine. And about the only really good, true benefit of a tariff is that it protects your local market. That bottle of French wine is going to have to compete against a bottle of domestic wine that is half or less in cost, and in many cases of comparable value, and in terms of taste and utility, okay? So there is a value to American farmers in that they're not having to compete with European farmers or Canadian farmers or Argentinian farmers as much as they have been. There is a benefit to American manufacturers who source all of their raw materials and parts in America. It's a big boost to Made in America. It's a big boost to manufacturing in America. But that means that our products cost less and can maintain as good or better quality as European and Asian competitors simply because of the tariff. Okay, are you all seeing how tariffs really work? The only real benefit is that it protects our market and our manufacturers and brings jobs and industry back to this country. That's the real benefit of tariffs. Otherwise, it's a consumer tax. And it's just more money out of your pocket. Okay, so be real about tariffs, understand what they are, how they work, what they're for, what use they have, and realize that in the long run, if you have obstructive, restrictive tariffs, you're going to do yourself no good because you'll become less competitive. Other countries that are out there in the free market going push to shove all the time will become stronger because their market is not as protected. Okay? So there are times, places, there are markets, there are trade zones, things that we need to compete in simply to keep up our standard of excellence as we rebuild our industries. And if you really want to think about this on a grand scale, please understand that the old British Empire economic model, which was strictly utilitarian, is coming head to head with the American economic model, which is much more based on productivity. The European model is based on class warfare and benefit that you don't earn. Okay. The American model is based on productivity and merit and benefit that you earn. Two diametrically opposed economic systems. And so our system is finally back on the board again. And the empire system, it has been shown to be failing. So that's where you're standing at right now, is that the entire world is having to face the fact that the British Empire system ultimately doesn't work. As Margaret Thatcher famously said, the problem with socialism is that sooner or later you run out of other people's money. Well, it's very much the same situation with the British economic model. At a certain point, 1% of the population has sucked off all of the assets and all of the benefit that can possibly be experienced. And 99% of the population is in poverty, in chaos, insecure, facing warfare, and going through all this other chaos and conundrum that has been caused by their system. Okay? So if nobody really put it to you that way, I'm putting it to you tonight. And you can go on to YouTube and look up Promethean Action and hear it from Susan Kakinda, who, like me, has been doing this for 40 years and knows the two economic systems in and out and can explain in very explicit terms what the two systems are, where they came from, and the history of both, so that you can see that, yes, this is what Mr. Trump is doing. It does make sense. All this chaos is superficial because at the root level, two different economic systems are diverging. The Americans are going back to their traditional American economic system, and the Brits are fighting that for whatever reasons. They're Brits, okay? So they don't need a reason to fight. Even if it's a good suggestion, even if it's proven to work, when their system has failed, they are sort of programmed to think that everything British is superior in all ways to everybody else. And so they don't listen. And we keep having to go through this ongoing, I won't even describe it as an argument, but we keep on going through this whole business of having to do things that don't work and prove to ourselves and everybody else that they don't work before we can even think about going back and doing something that does work and that has been proven to work. Anyway, if you don't believe me, go listen to Susan Kendo over at Promethean Action. It really is the Brits at the bottom of the dog pile every single time. Okay, Shannon, we got some questions?
Yep. And start with the one that most people have asked the most. I didn't hear if this was asked, but do we have an update on when the banks will open? Not just for vendors, but to pay bills, loans, and mortgages.
I don't know if everybody's thought about this, but all of the banking stuff has to be prepared before they can open to pay things like retail items. You have to have the wholesale business done, complete, before you can open up the retail end of it. You have to have your suppliers, you have to have your personnel, you have to have your computer systems, everything that is flowing into that computer network and into that retail network has to be there established before it gets down to the level of a retail account. You have to have the bank before you have the account. So our bank is built. The account structure is built. The connectors that connect the money and the credit to the bill, that's built. And as I said during our opening commentary, we have finished all of the regulatory hassles and everything else that we have to go through. So the launch of the bank is imminent. And it will be here before any further financial chaos has a chance to really rip everybody off their feet. And that's what I can say about it. I am not the bank. I don't pull that crank or flip that lever, okay? The bank is a separate institution. So asking me is not really appropriate, even though I do speak to the bank on a regular basis. And even though I do have a finger on what's happening with it, I'm not the one that's going to make that final decision to quote unquote ripcord. So far as I know, everything is ready.
Okay, next. How will the courts know whose foreclosed home they should return? Don't they need our names, address, case number, email to start the process? Do we need to notify them to start the process? Thank you.
Yeah, well, of course, we will have to contact the court. We will have to bring forward our property that was, that we were owed a mutual offset credit exchange exemption, that we requested it and that they didn't provide it. And that this was a misadministration on their part, since the territorial government owes that, and letting the municipal government that works for them run wild was their responsibility too. But exactly how to express that is something that really should be set up in like a template so that you can write down the individual information on a form and have it, all consolidated and have the fact of, the different references and everything consolidated in a sort of templated document that gives them all the information that they need, that states where you're coming from as your claim, and then builds the platform action for what they have to do, because they have to go back and look at all of those individual cases. So it's, again, one of those things that has to be, it's one thing to say, oh, he's guilty of child molestation, wrap him up in chains. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. First, you have to have everything brought together and have a trial, okay? And it's the same way with this. It doesn't quite work with, oh yeah, I should have had access to a mutual offset credit exemption exchange and nobody gave it to me and nobody opened up the program and blah, 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 blah. Okay? Because it's going to be the same answer in every case. So what makes the most sense is for us to get our act together and write up a template, and everybody use that template to address the remainders of the district court while they're still here to exonerate these cases. I haven't had time to do that, but that's what needs ultimately to be done. Doesn't mean that you can't do it yourself. You're just going to have to do a considerable amount of research to get it done. And so I would suggest that you let us continue to wrestle with the basic issue of the district court. And I will call for volunteers. Maybe the Silver Bullet Gang would like to take on writing up a template for all of the foreclosure cases that were wrongfully pursued and executed.
Okay. There are rumors of an Emergency Powers Banking Act allowing surveillance of funds spent from a bank account, including reporting on funds spent over $600 and reporting of any and all funds spent on precious metals. Is this true? And if so, what is your recommendation?
My recommendation is that we all get together and squelch the members of Congress and inform them, yeah, well, that may be true for the British subjects living in our states, but it's not true for us, and you have violated our privacy rights, and you've horned into an area where you were never given any authority. And that just needs to be plainly, flatly stated in front of their little pink noises when they go to do their jobs as members of the Congress. There isn't a word in any constitution, which we are owed, there is not a word in any constitution giving them any kind of power over our private banking or our what we spend our money on or surveilling us in any way. We have the right to privacy. We have the right to our possessions. And the only people that don't are those British subjects franchised under that system and the municipal citizenry that has been basically cashiered by the Brits. So they need to be told in no uncertain terms that no, you do not have that authority. And another thing that everybody needs to know that is if a law is not specifically read into the congressional record, it is not a law that can pertain to you. Notice the word I used. If it isn't actually read by a member of Congress into the congressional record 3 times, it is not a law that can pertain to you. Even if they read it into the congressional record 3 times, if it pertains to a situation or an operation that you don't partake in, it still doesn't pertain to you. So, for example, if they read a law about deep sea fishing rights into the congressional record 3 times, the only way that that law can pertain to you is if you are somehow active in deep sea fishing. So the vast majority, 92% of all congressional laws do not pertain to Americans at all and cannot pertain to Americans at all. And we're just missing the boat in not standing up and saying, hey, and when the state of state, when the little drudges at the state of state level that are running the state of state franchise come to us and present us with the same law as a statute, then we go back to them and we say, look, the federal law that you're codifying as a statute does not pertain to us. And if the federal law doesn't pertain to us, the franchise law certainly doesn't either. Thank you very much. Good day. This is what they've been doing. They've been getting away with this for so long and nobody's called them on it, that they continue to think that they can do these things and enforce these things using these legal presumptions, with nobody standing up and saying, no, you can't. Well, that's our job. We're supposed to stand up and say, no, you can't. No, you can't look at everything I do, everything I purchase over $600. No, that's not your job, and that's not any authority I gave to you. Don't consent. If they have to keep individual records on each and every one of us that don't consent, good. That's fine. But that does not give them any right to surveil your economic activity or try to do any of this stuff that is infringing on your right to privacy and your right to spend your money however you please.
Okay, next one. This is an odd one. Anna, it appears there's no official name for our flag. All online materials that we have discovered at this point support this. The name changes from paragraph to paragraph in all historical accounts of the flag's origin. More research found flag-related materials in Anna's websites even. The documents, which are the 2 main different names for our flag, are the United States Civil Flag of Peacetime or just the Civil Flag of Peace. Which one is it? Please help.
It's called the Civil Flag of Peace. Okay? The United States uses it, or did use it, as a subcontractor of ours, okay? The United States Incorporated did use it as a subcontractor. So it's proper to describe it as the United States Civil Flag or Civil Peacetime Flag. We own all of the flags. They belong to the Federation. We're supposed to be using the peacetime flag during peacetime and the wartime flag during wartime. And this was a worldwide standard for many, 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 many years. And it still is, so long as you invoke it properly, which we have. So the land and soil are at peace. The Brits are using the Title IV wartime flag which should also be converted to a peacetime flag, because if the land is at peace, the sea should be at peace too. They have no special rights to act as privateers in our names. If they want to act as privateers and go into business for themselves, then they should be flying the Union Jack. Anyway, you could go with either of those alternatives for describing our flag. The peacetime flag is to show that we're at peace with other nations, which we are.
Personally, I want to fly the Jolly Rogers, but Anna keeps telling me no.
Yeah, well, you can have the white bones on a black background. You can have the black bones on a white background. See, even they have their flags of peace and their flags of war. Even the pirates. It's nothing, it's nothing so controversial or unknown. Just because we deal with ignorant people every day, everywhere, doesn't mean that these are unknown customs. If even the pirates have a peacetime flag and a war flag, then it's pretty well established that, yes, every nation has its own peacetime and its own war flag. And we additionally have the Title IV flags, which are flags of a specific proportion, which is established under Federal Title IV, that is for use of our subcontractors when they're exercising our delegated authority in peacetime or war. I guess what I'm trying to say to you is that we can have a flag of any dimension that is recognizably the American flag of peace or the American war flag, and the federal subcontractors are obligated to use a flag that has a specific horizontal to vertical dimension.
Okay. One way for illegal immigrants to study and work legally in this country is to get married and apply for a green card. What are the options for illegal immigrants after becoming an ASN to study and work in the de facto world? Can they apply for a Social Security number in order to work legally without fear of being arrested or deported? Would they have to apply for a green card or equivalent?
Well, if they've been here for 7 years, which is our requirement, they shouldn't be in any trouble. And if you've married an American, that shouldn't be any problem either. That's a different route, but you are being included in the family, right? So you shouldn't have any problem. You're not here illegally if you married an American. And if you spent 7 years here without a felony and without taking public assistance, then again, they have no right or reason to complain or deport you. Of course,
If large banks are in, okay, sorry.
Well, you've seen the chaos. I mean, this place is crazy right now. So I would keep my head down, whether I had every right to be here or not, simply because the administration of the naturalization laws, the immigration and naturalization laws, is being carried out by kind of a militarized version of the International Immigration and Naturalization Service. So right now you've got a bunch of people that have been hired off the street, and given a flak vest and told to find illegal aliens living in the country. So we're living through a witch hunt right now. So if you can possibly stay out of that meat grinder and, not raise the issue, that's the best path to take. I would certainly, if I had married an American, I would certainly make sure that the American consulates were aware, because they're the ones that are going to have to go in and pick you up out of an ice dungeon.
Okay, next question. If large banks are insolvent and likely to close, will consolidation provide that the 12 regional Federal Reserve banks, A through L, need in order to remain open? Could these 12 regional banks become Treasury banks?
Well, they are becoming Treasury organizations, Treasury. They're being taken over by the Treasury. That doesn't mean the Treasury is going to become a central bank. It basically signals that the central bank system as a whole is being jettisoned. So any bank that is managed by the Treasury would then be engaged in normal banking. They wouldn't be into all of the commodity rigging and currency rigging that the Federal Reserve has been doing.
Okay, this one makes little to no sense to me, but I'm going to read it the way they typed it. Say someone wanted to domicile in Haiti or Kenya. What will her steps be to take in their country to become a national? First, who would want to go to Kenya? I've been there. Not a great vacation spot.
Well, many African Americans are moving back to Africa. They are being called home to their homeland, and so many of them are saying, "This is chaos, and this is nasty here." So, I'm going to go back. And you do see something like 250,000 Americans, and only heaven knows how many people from other countries have returned to Africa, and the African governments are welcoming them with open arms, and have programs to help them get settled in African countries, and they're building communities for American retirees. For example, if you're struggling to live on Social Security in America, if you move back to Mali or Chad or in this case Kenya, you can live like a king on your Social Security at this point. So this is not an odd question. Perhaps the person that wrote it is contemplating that kind of change. Once they get to their own country, they will find that the territorial system and the substitution of municipal and commercial corporations for the legitimate lawful government has taken place in most of these countries over there. And it'll be necessary to form an assembly. Many of those countries already have assemblies, okay? And so you either form a new assembly there, or you join the one that's already exists there, and you are looking at the same prospects as you're looking at here, except of course it's a different country, and it has different customs, it has different political organization. Most of the African countries do not have states within a nation, okay? They just function as one state. So there are a lot of different, well, I won't say challenges, but differences between Africa and the United States that are because they have differing political subunits, is the best way to put it. I'm not sure what the political subunits in Kenya are, or if they simply operate as a single state. But all of that would be affected by the same problems that we've had with territorial commercial corporations operating the government and municipal governments posing as local government. And the answer is, again, to open up your assembly to represent the lawful government of the people and to take back control of the land and soil. Now, to make things even more chaotic in Africa right now, Ibrahim Traore and Muammar Gaddafi's family and others that have been part of the, I guess it's called the Pan-American movement. Don't quote me, but it basically means an African Union that all 54 African nations would then become nation states, similar to the 50 nation states here, and they would be under one leadership internationally, and they would have one common currency that would be a gold currency issued by that that kind of supra government. It would be like what we've done in this country when we had combined all the nation states into the United States of America, or the Union states and combined them into the United States. They want to do that in Africa. So that's going on. The discovery that all of these different governments were operating as commercial corporations in the business of providing governmental services, or as municipal corporations that were engaged in providing city services, okay? That is being recognized in Africa just as it is here. So on top of that, you've got 243, I think, native nations whose natural borders do not necessarily combine or are confined within the body of a known political state. So, for example, you've got 243 traditional tribal nations in Africa, and their tribal territory may extend into 2 or 3 countries. So you have to work out kind of a dual national system similar to what we have here, which hasn't been worked out yet. And all of these organizational issues are very much in play and are very complex, is the word, in Africa. Now, those states like Kenya, which are former British states, are going to be more like here, and you're not going to have quite as much confusion. But no matter what you do, there will be a certain amount of throw it up in the air and see what lands, because you've got 3 major issues all combining and colliding at the same time. I hope that helps.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully. Is it true that on February 5th, South Korea hosted a landmark pandemic simulation exercise as a coordinated rehearsal of a rapid vaccine deployment system built by the Coalition for Endemic Preparedness Innovations, financed in part by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, integrated with the World Health Organization, and originally launched at the World Economic Forum in 2017? Do we need to pen another public law to protect Americans from this?
No. Now, our public law was not unique to COVID-19, and it can easily be codiciled to include any other activities like that. The problem that we have is that when they do these live exercises, then they tend to act upon them. It's like the dress rehearsal for them to unleash another epidemic of some kind. And, the WHO no longer has any authority over this country. Trump withdrew us from the WHO conventions and 65 other organizations that over the years had been accepted and funded by us. You have to realize that most of the funding that the UN has ever had has come from the Americans. So when Trump pulled us out of 66 different UN organizations, including the WHO, that took most of their funding. So, and it also took over any claim of authority that they could possibly assert regarding our health services or our participation in a vaccination program or anything like that. So that in one way, that takes a lot of the worry out of it. It also takes out the temptation, I would call it, for the WHO to try to do something like that.
Okay. Can a homeless and/or someone recently out of prison become an ASN? And is there a waiting period for them to become an ASN and join the assembly?
Well, obviously, they got to find a place to live and, have a commitment to live within the borders of that state. I'm not sure what their situation is. You would certainly have to have a location that you were living at before you could apply. Even if it's a halfway house or a hostel that has an address where you can get mail or that you can use it as an address.
Okay, next. Any new word on the Medbeds? And/or how do I find the Medbed Telegram channel?
Oh, I believe that it's just available if you go on to Telegram and ask to join the Medbed channel. I believe that you can just do that, make a request. The problem that we're having with the Medbeds, number one, is getting enough trained technicians to run them. Number two is, do I really trust this technology, which has been in the hands of those who have been responsible for all these other evils? I mean, if they would go out and use a hypodermic against 2/3 of the population, what else might they do to mess with our biology? I have to ask myself that question. Do I trust these people at all anymore? Or are they going to try to turn us into transhumans using the Medbed? It's a good question. They have breached their trust to such an extent that it's difficult to have a full-fledged participation instinct toward anything they do. So I know that I was invited to experience the Medbed and go to this secret location and undergo this magical process. Well, I didn't go. And maybe when it's opened up to the public and everybody has a chance at this and people come back and they're happy and healthy and their normal selves again, then I will be more comfortable about doing it. And maybe if I had a life-threatening illness, say I had stage 4 cancer, maybe I'd be more willing to give it a try. But the way things are, these med beds do exist. They are being used in programs within the military, have been for a long time. But I guess I have some reservations that I might as well share with you right now, that unless your life is really threatened by something, it's best to kind of assume a wait and see attitude, and let's see what these med beds can do. Let's understand how they function, how they operate. Let's stay the course and be a little bit cautious, because remember, the same people who have the Medbed technology also are the ones that had the COVID-19 technology. Just saying that unless you really are looking at a death sentence, otherwise, it's probably best to wait and see whether these new technologies are what's being advertised, or if there's some darker motive involved in making these available to the public.
Okay, next question. I have a Filipino fiance. What would be the best way to record our marriage where it would be recognized as a valid union in both countries? And how long does she have to be in the USA before I can change her status so she's an American state national?
Well, the waiting period is usually a year and a day of living within the borders of one state. I understand that if you're an American serviceman, there is a particular pathway. There's a way that they do these marriages to recognize them through the State Department, so that when you come back home from deployment, your wife can come with you, no trouble or problem. If you're not an American serviceman, you're just Joe average tourist over in the Philippines, you fall in love and you get married. You have a marriage license from the Philippines, which has to be validated by the State Department here. And it's basically a matter of sending in a certified copy of the Filipino marriage license or certificate to the U.S. State Department and saying, this is my wife, here's a picture of her, here's her passport, we got married, blah, 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 here's the certificate. We want the marriage recognized by the State Department, and for our way to be cleared to live in the United States. And then, she can be an ASN as soon as she's been here a year and a day. Does that make sense?
Does to me. All right. Do we commit any kind of infraction or in any way jeopardize our status if we check the U.S. citizen box when required to by a new employer because no forms recognize our status?
Well, this is one of those catch me, catch you type things where they never say which United States, right? And basically, once you've claimed back your identity as an American and entered into the land and soil, then you own all the other franchises associated with you. So you can take control at that point and not have to play their game. If they say, "Are you a United States citizen?" you say, "Which United States?" And once they make that clear, well, then you can say, "Yes, I own a franchise." You see? It's a gift to me, right? It's always a gift franchise.
Anna, please, any tips on needs for Treasury and setup for the state would be awesome.
Well,
I
there's some,
believe they're asking for tips on how to set up a state treasury.
yeah, well, they're going to need to, and we're trying to prepare a list of questions for them to answer first before they actually launch into trying to set up a state treasury, because there's some basic questions they have to ask themselves first. So we're working on that. We're going to try to get that out to all the states here very promptly so that they'll have a checklist. And then each one can go from there.
Okay, next question. Our assembly is about to print out an AAMVA according to your new hysterical PDF. Should we add Trump, Interpol, and the International Court of Justice? I already have the Army on there.
Well, the International Court of Justice does take individual civil rights suits, but otherwise it has to be a country-to-country kind of thing. So depending on the subject matter of your correspondence, it would either be appropriate to send it to the ICJ or not. If it involves your civil rights, then of course they would be an appropriate place to send the communication. Really, without knowing more about exactly what you're saying and how you're framing the issue, I can't comment any more than that right now.
Sorry about that. Just got bombarded by the boy.
That's a pretty
In one of
sweet
your
bombardment.
I know. In one of your recent webinars, you mentioned our precious metals were basically stolen by J.P. Morgan Chase and Trump. Are these metals back? These are the metals back in the GFG, correct or incorrect?
No, what happened is that the Federal Reserve stole our silver when in 1934 they created the Federal Reserve note as legal tender, and they passed a law, the Emergency Banking Act, and they set up a system by which they could purloin our silver dollars in exchange for their Federal Reserve notes on a one-to-one basis. Okay, so they gave us an IOU, we gave them our silver coin, and they collected all our silver dollars that way. They didn't actually give us anything but an IOU for it, but they collected all the silver dollars using that mechanism. And so they've got millions and millions and millions and millions of ounces of silver that they collected using this scheme. And then they created a silver hoard based on all of those collected silver dollars and used that as an asset that they securitized, monetized, threw into the fractional reserve banking system and created credit using our asset, our silver asset, to sponsor credit. All right. So the silver that they collected didn't actually get spent, it didn't get dissipated somewhere. It got put off in the corner and then used to generate credit. Okay, well, years go by and this scheme of theirs is working right up until the big short on Wall Street in 2007, 2008. And then all of a sudden the Federal Reserve said, we can't deal with the with the fallout from this Wall Street collapse. We're going to have to claim bankruptcy protection. So what they did, they claimed bankruptcy for the Federal Reserve System. Not just the Federal Reserve, but the Federal Reserve System, incorporated in all capital letters. So then you've got a partial bankruptcy of the Federal Reserve System, and all of the assets that were in that system are subject to the bankruptcy. This is not the same as the Federal Reserve going bankrupt. It's the Federal Reserve System going bankrupt. Okay, so they happen to be the ones that had possession of all our ounces of silver that had been collected under the 1933 Emergency Banking Act and then rat-holed and used as an asset. Well, J.P. Morgan was one of the creditors in that bankruptcy, and they received the name Federal Reserve in all capital letters, the trademark name of that system. Okay. Their buddy bank, Chase, received the trademarked name of Federal Reserve Board of Governors, just to give you an example. And so J.P. Morgan acquired a big clump of silver as a result of that whole little fandango. And we never knew how much until right now, when they got shorted on Wall Street in the commodity market exchange and the COMEX. And they had to come forward and demonstrate that they had that much physical silver to make up the $34 billion arrears that happened when the liquidity call was issued on them. So we now know that J.P. Morgan has at least 750 million ounces of silver. And we have reason to believe that that was acquired from the Federal Reserve System bankruptcy. Now we have to still prove that, and we have to prove that against the fact that J.P. Morgan has also been buying silver for the last 15, 20 years. And, the other banks look at that and they think, oh, they're buying silver, they're hedging their bets. Well, how about this? What if they're actually replacing the silver that they got from the bankruptcy with silver that they're purchasing on the open market, because they have receipts for the silver that they obtained on the open market, And that allows them to spend silver out of the Federal Reserve System silver and replace it with open market silver that they have a receipt for. You see, it's a substitution and replacement scheme, so that when the musical chairs stop circulating and the music stops and they all have to find a place to sit, JP Morgan will be sitting there with open market receipts for 750 million ounces of silver. And everybody will think, oh, gee, isn't that nice that they went out and bought 750 million ounces of silver. But what will pass by the regulators, unless we're swift and hard on it, is that 750 million ounces of silver actually was substituted for 750 million ounces of silver that they already had of ours. So that there are actually 750 million ounces of silver that they obtained from the bankruptcy settlement that they didn't properly account for, and that they're supposed to be holding in trust, right, for the actual owners. And they have 750 million ounces of silver that they bought on the open market that they have receipts for. Okay, so what happens when this 750 million ounces just quietly goes out the back door? Well, then it looks like all they have in their hands are 750 million ounces of silver that they bought fair and square in the open market, when actually there's two piles and one of them is gone. See, they play these games where they substitute and they it's like a shell game. That whole pile of silver is gone, and this new pile of silver is here that they can prove they paid for. And the irritating part is that they probably used our silver as the asset backing their credit to go out and buy silver on the open market. But we have yet to really come to grips with that. There are bigger fish to fry, but anyway, that's one of the things that is just an example of the sort of effort that goes on to hide where things went, who the actual owners are, what the actual resource is. It's a very clandestine and evil and sneaky bunch of games that these bankers play when they want to hide assets or they want to spend assets and make it appear that they are doing something that's proper when in fact they aren't.
Okay, let me make sure I understood that one. So brass tacks, it will not slow ours down.
Oh, no. We have silver assets, but that going after JP Morgan will be just a matter of going after JP Morgan. It will not slow us down or have any big effect on our ability to function in the marketplace.
Okay, we are down to the last 13 minutes. Any parting words of wisdom you want?
No, I'm kind of sore and tired today. As my opening rant expressed adequately, I think that we really truly need to do some soul searching and get the assembly vision fixed on doing the work at the state level so that people are prepared for taking on the responsibility of being the government at the state level. I mean, you may reduce everything down just to telling people what you'd like, but you at least have to answer the questions of what you need and what you want. Okay? And I'm not even seeing that come out of some of these state assemblies.
Okay, in light of my voice being gone and little boy who's being very clingy to daddy, I'm gonna like to request that we can call this now here, boss.
Might as well. I don't want to leave everybody on a downer note. We are making wonderful progress. There are some great things happening in the world. Americans are being recognized as Americans again. The British are taking a beating, or I should say the British government is taking a beating for its immorality and its legal chicanery. And so that's all to the good. And I do see a lot of good people out there working on their state assemblies, doing wonderful things. I'm just wanting to encourage everybody to take it very seriously and work hard and do your part. So I'm sure you will. I'm sure I'm not the only person in America that holds this country and its traditions dear. I'm not the only one that wants control of my future and the security of my property. I know that for sure. And I know that everybody is sick and tired of money that isn't money. So we have the prepaid credit, which is a valid resource, but we will not be living on debt spending. And that's a wonderful thought. So anyway, guys, as you go forward this week, take a little time out to remember what's really valuable and what really matters. And think of your many, many blessings. And remember that living well and being happy really is the best revenge against all those who try to make you miserable, who harass you, who bring unfortunate events and ideas into your lives. Okay? So the best way to beat the rats is number one, by not being a rat yourself. And number two, by not being disturbed by them, not letting them bring you down, not let them make you afraid, not let them bring your attention over to ugly things. You get to control what you think about and what you care about. So care about all the good and positive and wonderful things in your life and that you can envision for your future. And don't get distracted by all of the horrible news type items and the scandals and all the other things that are ripping away at the world, because at the end of the day, they are not what matters. Okay? So I just want to encourage everybody, value your homes, value your families, value the peace and security you can find in your heart, and try to keep focused on positive things and making progress every single day. Okay? Good night. God bless. Happy trails until we meet again.